Thank you all for being here today. Thank you to Rob, John, and the Beacon team, obviously, for allowing me to engage with you. Before we dive into our topic, I think it's important that I tell you a little bit about myself so you have a better idea of who is on the screen here in front of you. And Rob teed up some of this stuff, but on a personal side, first, I'm originally from the Northeast PA area. So if anybody likes to show The Office and is familiar with the town Scranton, I'm from a small town just outside of that, Clark Summit. I've been in the greater Philadelphia area for the last 15 years. It has its challenges because I am a New York Giants and New York Yankees fans. But please don't tune out yet. I have two daughters, 9 and 12-year-old, and they'll keep me busy, usually very often with cheerleading events across the country. So yes, I am a cheer dad. And I'm also very close to wrapping up my master's from Villanova University with a focus on leadership development. The little time remains that I have left, in the nice weather we get here in the Northeast. It's a little hot out there right now, but you can find me out there hacking away on a local golf course. So, Rob, I did see that Beacon invite, and I may just take you up on kind of brushing up my skills there. So, on the professional side, as Rob mentioned, I'm the founder of Core Coaching Consulting, and it's an HR services company with four key areas: individual coaching for individuals such as yourself or those experiencing career transition, or executive coaching for C-suite leaders. I do keynote speaking, taking scary topics like ours today and making it a little bit more approachable and hopefully manageable for individuals to navigate going forward. Learning and development. A large part of my career was creating, implementing, and facilitating engaging curriculums for corporate America. So very passionate about that topic. And lastly, just HR consulting, providing that outside perspective for organizations and so they could have a fresh set of eyes. But as Rob mentioned, most recently, prior to taking the leap into entrepreneurship with Core, I've had 15 years of HR experience with a variety of organizations ranging in size. My most recent role with Embark had me overseeing close to 5,000 employees at 45 different sites across 8 states. So again, over that time, I've hired, trained, developed, promoted, and unfortunately fired, thousands of people. So I'm excited to be here with you today to speak with you. As you could tell from my background, I'm qualified on the back of house of hiring practices, right? Perhaps more importantly, though, and Rob alluded to this, I was once on the other side of this presentation. I have gone through career transition. As an HR professional, I felt I was prepared, or thought I was prepared, I should say, at least tactically for the job search. I had a strong resume, just needed some updating. Maybe my LinkedIn was optimized, right? We all know some of the tactical stuff. What I was not prepared for was the emotional tolls that, we alluded to and what this presentation is going to talk about today. In the process that this transition could have not only on me as the individual, but on the individuals around me. So frankly speaking, I found great value in the sessions like these and what they have to offer. Not only for the content, which hopefully you see value in today, but also simply the community engagement. The reason I started Core was my passion to expand the impact beyond those four walls of corporate America. And I'm excited to do that with you today on a topic that's very important to me as having gone through a transition before. So that said, let's dive right in. The first thing we're going to discuss is, again, how a career transition becomes an emotional roller coaster. Facing job loss is a challenging experience, and many find, again, ourselves unprepared, whether we thought we were or not. There's the process of informing friends and family. There's the managing the finances. There's initiating a job search, which maybe you haven't done in a while, and dusting off that resume. But all of that can be emotionally taxing and present, again, challenges for both you as the individual going through it, but those around you. So when I think about this roller coaster, the ride has volatility, but it really depends on where you are on the ride. So maybe you're just starting in your job search, and maybe it's just tick, 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 ticking up the track, and you're nervous, but kind of excited. Maybe you're seeing this as an opportunity to optimize your career choice or refine what you didn't have out of your last employer. Maybe you're halfway through this ride and it's had some twists and turns. Maybe you've had multiple interviews, but no offers have been extended. Maybe you've even had a loop or two, an offer extended and revoked, or great communication, but no follow-up and don't hear anything. And maybe you've even got off the ride and got back on. Maybe perhaps you found a role, but realized it wasn't right it wasn't the right fit. The biggest thing with this, I will say, is each of our rides is different, but very few are without some of those twists and turns. And those twists and turns lead to this emotional roller coaster. And that's what we're going to take a deeper look at now. Those main emotional challenges that can make this a quote unquote wild ride. So, top 5 I'm going to go through today. There are certainly more, but I think these encompass the majority of things individuals face. And the first one is simply fear of the unknown. Uncertainty, and again, maybe you don't have uncertainty. Maybe you knew this was coming. Maybe you were made aware of a reduction in force and had time to prepare, but maybe you didn't. Maybe you're proactively changing roles or industries and you put yourself in the transition period. Maybe it was against your choice, right? And it was just a result of the situation or downturns in your company. Regardless, each pursuit has a level of uncertainty and unknowingness to it. As humans, typically that uncertainty evokes a level of fear within us, and again, even to those around us. And the longer you're on the roller coaster, the more you start to wonder when it will end. Like I said, it's human nature to be uncomfortable with this process without knowing how something is going to turn out. I think about watching a suspenseful movie and just shutting it off in the middle. Think about that, what that would do to our brains, right? We'd like to finish puzzles. We'd like to see how things come together at the end. And not having that in our human nature to, round out our story drives that uncertainty. With that uncertainty breeds self-doubt. That starts to creep in. We begin to question our own ability to succeed in landing either a new job, transition to a new role, a new industry. And again, it leads to anxiety or even hesitation or paralysis where you don't do anything. You start wondering, again, am I making the right choice? Am I doing it for the right reasons? Look at so-and-so who's doing well over in this industry. Should I go do that? Again, no matter how resolute you are, once you have this fear of the unknown, that self-doubt starts to creep in. The next thing is that uncertainty and that fear of the unknown starts to lead to a loss of identity. We're going to discuss this a little bit more in the concept of authenticity here in a few minutes. But especially here in the US, we associate our professional identity, our self-worth with our career. Right, wrong, or indifferent, that's what we've been conditioned to do. So transitioning can feel like a part of losing oneself. Even if you hate your job. The irony in that, even if you hate your job, it still gave you purpose in the morning. Something to wake up and have a sense of accomplishment at the end of the day to have done something. You lose the community, the people that you were so close with and engage with on a regular basis. And candidly, it's tough to watch. The show goes on without you, right? The job goes on. And I think we all recognize that. We know how that works. We're all intelligent individuals. It's not a surprise, but it still impacts us. Just like when you're coming up to a loop in a roller coaster, you know it's coming. It's not a surprise, but it still makes your stomach drop. The other part that comes with that loss of identity is that role adjustment, right? You think of the career, the transition in the job search, and you think of the resume and the LinkedIn optimization. But what about once you actually get the offer? There's even a level of anxiety in dealing with that. Even once you land a role, then there's the challenge of adapting to that new role with different people, new responsibilities, a different boss with different expectations. And again, that all disrupts your sense of professional self. It feels like you're starting over again. And while you might be, you're starting with some experience at least. And we'll talk a little bit about that. The third biggest area or emotional challenge is simply, again, the stress and anxiety, the pressure to land a job, to minimize the impact to yourself and those around you, right? To keep get the train back on the rails, to get that job and prove oneself in the new position. That all can cause significant stress. Like I said, it's stressful to find the job. Now it's stressful to get an offer. You have to negotiate. Now you got the negotiation done. Now you have to onboard. That's stressful. You get through the onboarding. Now you have to get through the learning curve. That's stressful. So it doesn't necessarily end with just finding the role, right? That stress continues until you kind of assimilate to that new role in that organization. But again, adjusting to that new norm can be tough. The fourth one could be the impact on your personal life. And we were talking about this a little bit before some individuals got on. You may have heard the tail end of this conversation. Again, my two daughters, right? My wife, I'm the breadwinner. I find even my parents, it's one of those things where, similar to parenthood, you kind of have to experience career transition to truly be able to understand it, right? If you know, you know. I will tell you personally, my parents don't understand it. They just understand that their son's out of a job and they were worrying about him, right? And going back to the emotional tolls, we'll talk about the importance of having a strong support system. But I laugh with my parents because there'd be days where I was doing good and they'd call and they'd check in. And I was not thinking about it, right? And they'd actually pull me back to a darker place where I started getting more anxiety and worrying about it. It was all well-intentioned. They're just concerned and wanted to show that concern. But again, there's a lack of relatability. Again, it leads to some feelings of isolation. It causes more stress. You know, even on your good days, people start asking you about it and it brings it back up. Before some of you got on, I was talking about a conversation I had with my wife before when I was in career transition. And I remember her asking me, I had an opportunity that was lucrative in front of me, but it wasn't the right fit for me. And I knew that. And I knew, hey, if I took this, I'm going to be right back on the roller coaster in 6 months because it wasn't the right fit. And I remember her saying, just like, why can't you take it? Right? Just do it. And again, it just went back to that relatability. If you know, you know, right? A new job requires that time, that energy. It affects personal relationship. It affects routines. Again, it has a personal impact on those around us, and well beyond just us as the individuals. And last but not least, and I think the obvious one, and the first one we usually go to is just financial concerns. Again, these are different for everybody, but I think usually if you're looking for a job, we're all in the sense of we can't just pivot to retirement, right? I know I would love to be able to call Fidelity, when I was in transition and then say, hey, good news, Corey. We have exceptional returns. Don't worry about finding a job. Doesn't usually work out that way. So those potential changes in income, again, increases, decreases, whatever it may be, can cause that financial stress. Concerns about, your long-term financial stability lead you to worry and be apprehensive, and that's 100% natural. But this presentation isn't to scare you, so I have some good news. Up until this point, ladies and gentlemen, you have survived 100% of the hard times you have faced. You have gone through 100% of your worst days and you're doing great. And this too shall pass. Navigating these emotional challenges simply requires a level of grit, resilience, as we're going to call it, and persistence. And going back to the number 2, loss of identity, it requires grounding and authenticity. And that's really the 2 key topics and why we thought this was a great topic to bring forward today. So let's start with understanding resiliency first. Whereas, again, if you're in the Philly area, the word I also like is grit. So what is it? Well, again, by our Merriam-Webster dictionary, right? It's simply the ability to recover from or adjust easily to misfortune or change. Now, I'm going to pause here and disagree with the definition for a second. I'm going to remove that word easily out of there. But ultimately, again, it's your ability to bounce back, recover, right? Like I said earlier, if we're looking for metaphors, get the train back on the tracks. One of the quotes I love is from Adam Grant. And Adam's an organizational psychologist, a best-selling author, and a professor here at the Wharton School at UPenn in Philly. And Adam says progress isn't always about getting better. Sometimes it's about bouncing back, right? That resilience. Success is not only the peaks you reach, it's the valleys you conquer. Every experience of enduring adversity and overcoming obstacles is a meaningful accomplishment. Resilience is a form of growth. Whether you realize it in this moment or not, your hardships in life attribute just as much, if not more, to your growth than your successes. I'm going to say that again. Whether you realize it or not, your hardships in life attribute just as much to your personal and professional growth, if not more, than your actual successes. So resiliency is so important. This ability to learn from our mistakes and still keep going. How do we do that? Well, here's a few tips. First one, setting small achievable goals. Again, maybe it's not, I'm going to find and apply for 100 jobs today. And sometimes we feel like that's what we have to do. Maybe taking a more manageable approach of today, I'm just going to source quality jobs. I'm going to save them, put them aside, not going to go applying. I'm just going to find them today. Today is my sourcing day. Then maybe I'm going to break the next goal down to, I'm going to apply to 3 of my top ones that I find and do a great job at really tailoring my resume and finding a strong connection. Not the shotgun approach of 10, but again, breaking those goals down to make them smaller and more achievable so it doesn't feel as daunting. The next tip I love and I find very important, maintain a routine. This is very tough. And if anybody has kids who are out of school, you know how quickly routines can fall apart. Because I had to shake mine awake prior to hopping on this call just not long ago. But it can be tough to get out of bed when you're going through these emotional roller coasters. It can be tough to keep good eating habits. I got to be honest, it's tough to eat good eating habits regardless sometimes. It's tough not to sit in front of that TV watching whatever it may be. But building a routine of good habits will, again, help you build that resiliency. It keeps you conditioned. Little things. Again, making one new connection a day. Going out to meet somebody for coffee at least once a week. But trying to still keep yourself engaged and maintaining a routine. The last one I can't stress enough. Seeking support from friends, family, mentors, and others in similar situations. One, I go back to that last comment there of, there's a relatability level where you truly can't sympathize with somebody if you haven't been there. So finding people in groups like this, I think is tremendous. And I want to pause there just to commend each of you for taking the time, the effort, and being here today and utilizing your network, inviting a friend, and utilizing the tools and resources available to you. Again, you're not going through this alone. So to keep it with my Philly theme, there's a quote I'll just kind of end with to simplify this here from Rocky. And it's not about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done. And again, my going back to my kids, they hate that line where I said, hey, the world up top there where it says the world isn't always rainbows and butterflies, or I say sugar plums and lollipops. Ladies and gentlemen, we know we're going to get knocked down, right? It's a matter of getting backed up and keep going forward. And that's really what the resiliency is about. You will get through this. Now let's take a moment and talk about authenticity. So what does it mean to be authentic? Well, again, of undisputed origin or genuine, again, original, real, true to yourself is really the definition I like to use when I think of authenticity. So again, why would I kind of speak about this in the context of career transition? We'll go back to number 2 of the top emotional losses and challenges, right? Comes to that loss of identity. So how does that display itself maybe in career transition? Well, maybe networking. right? I know this is an area people find trouble with. I will tell you, I'm a type A, and I found trouble networking when I entered career transition. To me, I perceived it as I have to be everywhere and meet everybody. And I got out there and I was shaking hands and kissing babies, right? I found really quickly that that was not what networking needed to be. I redefined it as purposeful networking, where I went out as my true self and I went out to groups of value where I could receive help, but also offer help in return. Because that's what I truly love to do. That's who I am. So again, I rooted myself back in that authenticity. Thinking about your resume, when you start to dust off your resume and get back into transition and get back into quote unquote selling yourself, is it accurate? Does it reflect you authentically? Does it show who you truly are? Think about the job choice you're making. One of the things I remember, similar to the conversation I had with my wife, is I just needed to get another job. And I was putting so much stress on me to replace my previous job, previous W-2 with another W-2. I wasn't necessarily staying true to finding a career, right? And finding the right home for me next. So again, when I think about that authenticity, staying true to yourself, these are some of the areas I think about. Brene Brown, she's a leading researcher on courage, vulnerability, and leadership. And I think her quotes highlights this challenge well. So often when we feel lost, adrift in our lives, our first instinct is to look out into the distance to find the nearest shore. But that shore, that solid ground, is within us. The anchor we're searching for is the connection, and it is internal. Again, we start looking for help. We start looking for people. And again, you do need that support system, but that strength needs to come from within you first. Again, anchoring yourself in authenticity, staying true to yourself through your actions and the decisions you make. The second one I'm going to show here illustrates how we choose to live our life in authenticity, originalness, and our genuine self on a daily basis. So authenticity is a collection of choices that we have to make every day. It's about the choice to show up and be real, the choice to be honest, the choice to let our true selves be seen. So there's a few steps here. Again, want to give you some actionable items on how to help drive your authenticity and keep that at your core going forward. First, reflect and align on your core values and align your actions with them. Truly think as you redefine this opportunity, what is important to you? What do you value in a career? Salary? Sure. We all have requirements there. But what about time off? What about a good boss? What about business ethics? We've all had enough professional experience at this point in our lives to be able to look back and evaluate what were the positives that we liked about our previous experiences and how do we duplicate them moving forward? And what were the negatives that we didn't like? And how do we remediate them going forward? A big part of this is communicating openly and honestly. And I'm going to go with a couple examples. On the personal side, communicating with those about you about how you're feeling and what you're going through. Helping my parents and my wife explain some of the things I was feeling on a daily basis so they could better support me and better understand what this process is like. Again, if they don't know, they can't help. I'll also take it to the professional side. When dealing with talent acquisition and recruiters, around expectations when you're going through the interview process, when you have the opportunity to ask questions. I think, if nothing else, I've learned throughout the transition process what an opportunity that is to, again, truly figure out if this is a good fit for me, not just them, and truly have the opportunity to refine what I'm looking for. The last one is simply staying true to your passions and interests. Again, it goes back, are you prepared to pursue and align a career Or are you putting the pressure on yourself to settle and just replace a job? If you stay true to your passions and interests, you'll usually go find and seek out and not settle on a job. And you'll continue to wait and persevere and push yourself to find that career that's the right fit long term, where you could be set up for success. So we talk about each concept individually here, but I want to discuss now where they intersect, where resiliency and authenticity complement each other. So the best way I can describe it is authenticity keeps you grounded and better enables you to be resilient. There's a quote from Maya Angelou, I think, that encapsulates the value of authenticity and resilience. And it's simple. It says, "You alone are enough. You have nothing to prove to anybody." You alone are enough, and you have nothing to prove to anybody. I think it's a powerful statement, and emphasizing that we need to recognize, embrace our inherent worth without putting so much external validation on that through a job or a title. Again, it enables us to stay resilient in the face of those challenges. By going back to staying authentic and true to ourselves, we develop that inner strength, that confidence that are essential for overcoming whatever that adversity may be and achieving this personal and professional growth. I think about an interview. I think about when you're nervous and you go into an interview trying too hard to sell yourself. And again, going back to this quote, prove yourself that align with their wants and needs. That never feels comfortable. You never walk out of there going like, I did it, right? And I think that comes back to because you are working so hard to meet those external needs as opposed to looking internally and simply preventing your authentic self. And if it meets those needs, great. If not, not trying to put a square peg in a round hole. Think about the opposite of that situation. When you were in an interview in which you were relaxed and truly comfortable in just telling your story. Think about how much more natural that felt and how you leave there thinking, no matter what happens, I put my authentic self out there. I think that's what this comes down to with authenticity. So the question then becomes, how do we align them? How do we align ourselves with this mind shift that authenticity keeps us grounded and drives our resiliency? Well, one of the first things I would tell you is it's changing your mindset to start embracing change as an opportunity. Again, this can be, if you view it properly, an opportunity to refine what you want out of a career, to recalibrate and realign your professional and your personal life. This is an opportunity to get what you like from the previous jobs and remove what you didn't like. But if you don't see it as that, and you have your head down and you don't see this as an opportunity, right, to refine, it will just be get another job. The next one, balancing your self-care with the goal pursuit. And this goes back to what I mentioned earlier. It can be tough to keep a routine, to get out of bed, to eat healthy. Again, this is hard enough to do when we have a job, let alone when we don't. But again, this is an opportunity. We all know this too shall pass. We're going to have to work again, right? But one of the things I often challenge my clients with and individuals in a career transition I'm speaking with is this. If you all landed that job on Monday and you were starting Monday, what would you look back on and wish you did with this time that you had? Maybe it's a couple house things, maybe, doubtful. But I know, like, if it's myself, it's more around things of time with friends, times with my family, traveling, whatever it can be. But again, if something landed Monday, I wouldn't want to look back on this opportunity and just saw it as a time where I was only stressed out and didn't seize the opportunity that I necessarily had for this period in my life. The third one is simply focus on the long-term growth rather than the immediate success. Again, you hear me referencing the perspective of career versus job. When I think of salary at this point, it's a price of entry, right? That's what all jobs come with. But I think you need to look deeper and identify what you really want out of a role, out of an organization, out of a boss. Do you want 5 offers tomorrow that don't necessarily align, that are just jobs that replace a W-2? Or do you want one in 6 months that's actually perfect and the right fit for you? Again, I think that all comes back to staying true and authentic in your pursuit. So at this point, I'd like to open the floor and check the chat and talk with John here, see if we have any questions or comments. But I want to throw out a few thoughts and ideas as well to help you all reflect on your personal and professional experience with resiliency and authenticity. And I encourage you, please, based upon your comfort level, feel free to share any of these experiences. I will tell you, I often learn just as much from participants in these sessions as I think is hopefully they get from me. While I appreciate everybody has their own comfort level, one of the things I always come back to is vulnerability is a trust accelerator. By, again, showing your authentic self and being vulnerable and putting yourself out there, it accelerates trust within other individuals you're dealing with. And then they, in turn, show more of their authentic self. So I encourage those of you to share, whether it's your hardships, best practices, it may help somebody else on the call. But one of the first questions I'll put out there is, what is a hardship that maybe you have faced in your past? How has it positively shaped you in the person you are today? And again, you may not have realized this at the time, but looking back, you may realize now the value it's added. What strategies have each of you found effective in building resiliency? And again, personal or professional, right? But again, your attitude is in your control. And here, how do you maintain a positive mindset during challenging times? Right? How do you keep that attitude a positive attitude? How do you help, utilize the team around you, the friends and family in that network of support? So I'd like to turn it over. John, if you wouldn't mind just monitoring the chat. And if anybody has any questions, please. And then we'll go into a little wrap up. I'll share some final thoughts and my contact information with everybody.
One story I'll share to that last point is surrounding you with people who are positive. I was speaking, I had a client, very, very early client who was deeply depressed. He'd been out for two years when he came to me. He thought, I'll never land. He was ready to take a huge pay cut if he could just get anywhere. And you could sense the desperation. So he invited me to speak to a job search group he was a member of. And as we left the group, I said, do not ever go back to that group again. Because the whole group, basically, they just were complaining. It was a giant pity party. I said, this is the worst place you could possibly go for support. You need people who are going to lift you up.
Yeah, no, John, I appreciate that point. And listen, we do need to vent, right? But if there's the right people, right time, right place to do all that. And again, I'm with you. I would hope that, you're seeking out more groups like this that offer this value and this place of positivity and connection to help accelerate you in moving forward, not kind of pull you down. Appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, I'll share an experience. So my first gig as a CFO, which was probably 15 years ago, I came into a company in Southeast Indiana that was a turnaround opportunity in early 2008, and then the financial crisis hit. So there were a lot of times when I struggled making payroll, and it was like week to week survival. And, there was nobody else in the company that I could really talk to. They were all, they were not financial people, including the CEO. And what would give me inspiration sometimes is I get out of my office, I turn around, I'd walk through the floor. It was a warehousing packaging operation. And we had 400 or 500 employees, And during busy season, we'd have about the same number of temps. And a lot of them were making 11, 12 bucks an hour. And it's like, they're counting on you. And if the company folds, I'll be fine. I'll make it. A lot of these people, they need the money to put bread on the table. And that really inspired me, and it helped shape me into, it's not about, when you're a leader, it's not about you. You'll be fine. It's about all the people that are counting on you to do your job so that they can do and have basic things that we all take for granted because we know we're not going to struggle to put food on the table. So that was really helpful for me, and I found that in challenges that go out to where the people who don't make much money work in your firm, and you get some strength from that. You really do.
Yeah, Glenn, I appreciate you sharing. Again, I think one of the things when you're going through, transition is, it can be tough to get motivated or inspired sometimes. And inspiration is highly personable, right? What inspires me may not inspire someone else, right? You look at the Grand Canyon, that's awe-inspiring. Some people see a big hole in the ground, right? It is different. But I think, again, finding what inspires you, surrounding yourself with that, right? Driving that positivity, finding that, anchoring yourself in that why and that authentic why allows you to kind of overcome those challenges and pursue things a little bit further. Thanks for sharing.
Charlie, I think you wanted to make an observation.
Yes, thank you very much. I really appreciate, Corey, you sharing this perspective on things. When you're out of work and you got kicked to the curb, you don't feel good about yourself. All your worst fears about yourself surface. Imposter syndrome sets in, and it's difficult to get through days. So to answer your questions here, for me, question number one, I had to bottom out. I had to crash and burn before I realized something was wrong. Now, I'm just a thick-headed Irishman, but I realized something was wrong. And what I realized was I didn't know who the heck I was. So when you say your values are your core to resiliency, it's so true. And those answers are inside. So many people try to emulate other people that they deem to be successful. That's not who they are. The answer is inside. The second question is, if you know the authentic you, if you do the work, the emotional work to find out who you really are, not who you think you want to be, or not who you believe other people want to be, but who you really, really are, when you do that particular work and you discover what that is, then authenticity kicks in and resiliency pops. Everybody needs a coach, a mentor, an advisor. You need somebody. This journey cannot be taken alone. I resisted that. I said, no, I don't need a coach. I should be able to do this. We all need coaches. And I found that to be absolutely important in my development, et cetera. And the last thing is, how do you maintain a positive mindset? For me, it's learning. When we're working and we're on that hamster wheel of work, we are not developing ourselves. Our jobs are trumping our career. And the more we can learn about ourselves, what's happening in a niche in the business world, that gives us strength and knowledge, because the people with whom we're interviewing many times are not as smart as we are as to what's currently going on and what the trends are. And therefore, if we know we have information to share during the networking and interviewing processes, this gives a totally different perception of us. We're not a professional beggar looking for a job. We're a resource to help companies achieve their goals. That's a totally different perspective on us. And that helps us maintain a positive mindset, in my opinion. So I'll be quiet.
No, Charlie, speak up anytime you want, my friend. I got some goosebumps here. I don't know if you can see them on camera. If it wasn't so disruptive, I would clap for you here. You said some great things here. I mean,
I have a GoFundMe page, Corey.
All right, now it's listening. It's getting a little icky. Never mind, Charlie. It doesn't feel good anymore. I will tell you this. The crash and burn, unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, I mean, it's human nature. We usually need something drastic for us to realize it and to make a change, right? I know I should be working out and doing more exercise. You know what's going to actually make me do that? When my doctor tells me something drastic that impedes upon my health, that naturally makes me go, oh no, I have to do something, right? So it's finding ways, hopefully, to prevent it before you get to that crash and burn stage. I think you're absolutely right. Self-discovery is a key component in identifying who our true authentic self is. It's not easy. It takes some raw emotion and some hard conversations with ourselves and look in the mirror. But to your last point there, getting a coach, getting teams, people around you who will challenge you and not just tell you what you want to hear to help you find that true you, I think is very important. And the last thing, just to pick up on what you said, I love the part about continuous learning and skill development. Again, you're out of a job and you come back to your next job even stronger. What does that show the people during your time about your resiliency, right? When you're in an interview and you say, oh, tell me what you've done in this transition period. Oh, I've gotten this new certification. I've been taking this course. I attended this workshop, whatever it may be. It shows your resiliency and puts it on display for people. That's the type of people, hiring managers want to hire. Charlie, thanks again.
My pleasure. My pleasure. I love this group. This organization does so much good for people, and messages coming from you. I thank Rob for inviting you. The messages that we share, we need uplift. We need to feel confident that there is a future. And I can tell you the best thing that ever happened to me is when I was told, Charlie, we don't want you anymore. We don't like you. Get the hell out of here. That hurt, but it was a wake-up call because I knew that wasn't me. That was just a convenient excuse to get rid of me. And once you find out who you are and then you find out the people you serve, life becomes very wonderful. Thank you, Corey.
Thanks, Charlie. You can't unsee it once you see it, right? Once you have your eyes open. And to your point, initially when we go through this, it does not feel like a positive. But over time, if you seek it through the right lens and looking at it as an opportunity, it ends up tend to being one. And I share that same sentiment that some of the best things that happened to me was me entering in career transition and how it helped me to find myself and build this resiliency.
It's a time, every great ending, every great beginning starts with an ending.
There you go.
And the period of time in between the ending and the new beginning is a time to really get in touch with yourself and figure out what do I want my future to be?
Absolutely.
And then pursue it.
Prashant, you wanted to share something?
Well, more of a question, I would say. Like sometimes industries have business cycles where, the entire industry is kind of like low for a few years and so on. So we saw it say the hotel industry during the COVID or, like the financial crisis and so on. So, you kind of let us assume that kind of like what you are and that you have some expertise in that line of business or industry. And there is going to be a trough, but you don't know whether that trough is going to be 1 year, 3 years, whatever, And so then what should you do? Should you basically hang on and say okay, yeah, I know the industry will come up and then, what I have are the proper skills and they will continue, or find something else, which is not related to that industry and so on. So, or what should be the attitude to go around that?
Yeah, Prashant, thank you for the question. And again, I think the answer to that is highly personable to a degree, right? I don't know if it's very tough to say, right? I'm a realtor. I know this cliff is coming at some point, so I'm going to transition into X, right? Or Y, Z, whatever it may be. I think some of the best things you could do is one, prepare, right? I think all too often we are very reactive and we wait till we are told we're being let go, and then we have to dust off the resume. Then we have to, re-engage on LinkedIn. So I think some of the best things I would do in that situation is just being proactive, right? Continuing to stay engaged in networks. Again, continuing skill development and kind of broadening your horizon. But I go back to, at the end of the day, it's going to decide if there's somewhere else, if there's another passion worth pursuing that you think is, worth pivoting to, or at the end of the day, no, this is the right space I'm going to be in. I just have to, kind of survive these tough times, and everything goes through it, to your point, right? Every industry has its ups and downs. But if that's the space you want to be in, there's finding ways to adapt. And I would say most skills are industry agnostic, right? So if you do have to adapt or pivot for a period of time, looking for ways that you could highlight your strengths and transition them over to whatever that new opportunity may be. So it's not as much of a drastic change, right? And you're still keeping yourself anchored in your authentic self, what you enjoy doing, what you like doing, what you're good at doing, and what there's a need for out there. I'd encourage the group, though, if anybody else had any other questions, but like I said, I think being proactive, I think one of the first things people get into network, they stop networking as soon as they get a job again. And I think so. It's one of the worst things you could do. Again, dusting off the resume, it's almost like getting in shape. Keeping that thing in shape is a little bit easier than having to revive it from being out of shape from a decade ago. So keeping proactive, keeping engaged with your network, I think are some key areas.
I'd also be careful about getting trapped too much by what you've defined as the industry. I've someone I've been working with who keeps saying, "Oh, pharma, no one's hiring in pharma. There are all these massive layoffs," and there are there are big layoffs going on in big pharma. And so I did a little Google search on pharma, pharma hiring, pharma jobs, and what came up was, big pharma. There's a lot of layoffs. This part of pharma, huge hiring going on, huge investment. So it's how you look at the industry. Maybe there's a part of or a very closely associated area that is very thriving, or a small segment that's really thriving that you can focus on at that point.
Yep. John, great point. Again, even ancillary businesses, right? And finding, looking at the other side of the business, right? If it flips, I'll tell you, my wife is a teacher. Then she pivoted over to behavioral consulting. And now she's exploring the other side of the business of being a child advocate, right? And going to the other side. So there's still all in that education, still all pursuing the same thing she wants to do, but just, again, kind of cutting that pie a little bit differently and finding different opportunities.
Corey, you talked about resiliency, and I really liked the part where you said that it's not always about progress, it's about bouncing back. To take that a step further, as we get older, we lose our fastball a little bit. And of course, there's varying views on aging out there as well. And that can sometimes mean that you have to make an adjustment that, look, I don't have the fastball to do this, but I can do that. Maybe it's a slower pace, maybe it's fewer hours, but an adjustment that I've been struggling with is internally saying, well, this just isn't right for me to go back into the major league. I don't have the major league fastball, curveball anymore. And I think that takes that one step less. That doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. It's just a natural part of your life that you're going to have to make adjustments, and it's a matter of adjusting your expectations and what makes the most sense for you going forward. And that I found emotionally very difficult to do.
Yeah, again, John or Glenn, excuse me, it's that looking in the mirror, right? Those tough conversations, that self-awareness and drawing from that authenticity to maybe say, this isn't the space for me anymore, for whatever that reason may be, whatever that variable may be, and making that pivot. But again, you can't get there. It's one of those things you can't help somebody with a problem if they don't see one. You can't get over that if you don't see that obstacle there. So I appreciate you bringing that point up. And again, the resiliency and the authenticity and the self-awareness that is needed.
Yeah. What are you may lose the fastball, but there's something else you may have gained in terms of your expertise and other things that you can do. I mean, my dad was a tennis player, and he, in his 60s and even into his 70s, he couldn't run the way he used to, but he could get people. He'd hit it such that they would be hitting it back to him, and so the local tennis team players would be seeing him leaning on his racket, waiting for a serve, and saying, "Who's this old duffer?" as he proceeds to beat them, because he had the experience, he had the way to manage the game.
Yep. Yeah, John, I mean, I'll say this, And Glenn, to your point, right? The fastball, it's one pitch,
Right.
right? It doesn't define someone as a pitcher. There's more pitches, right? So while you lose that piece, there's still a whole other part of you. This is only one small slice of who you are. And it's just a different way of looking at things. It goes back to, again, having that positive mindset, and seeing it that way, seeing it as an opportunity.
But I think to that analogy about you have a pitcher, it's a fastball pitcher. Some fastball pitchers don't develop another pitch, refuse to develop another pitch, and they're out of the game, right?
Yep.
It's tempting to just say, oh, I don't have my fastball, I can't compete anymore, instead of saying, well, if I do this or that, maybe I can be a reliever,
There you go. That's that growth
or I can
mindset,
be
right?
a long or short reliever, that sort of thing.
Yep.
But that's a huge change to make. And for some people, they just check out and say, the hell with it.
Yep.
It's not an answer either.
Charlie, you,
There was a fellow that the Philadelphia Phillies got a trade from the St. Louis Cardinals many years ago, and he had lost his fastball, but he developed another pitch and enabled him to pitch another 12 years, and it was responsible for getting him into the Hall of Fame, right? We have to be willing to figure out what our superpowers are, what our potential is, and leverage them. Otherwise, we're just going to be ordinary, and we're just not going to move as fast as we want. And we give ourselves more opportunities when we try to shake things up. Is it scary? Yeah. But it's even scarier not doing it and remaining the same. So
There you
that's
go.
all.
And
by the way,
scary, being stagnant is even more scary.
And Mr. Weber has many, many skills that he hasn't tapped yet.
Look at that. And you're talking about surrounding yourself with good people. Look at him building you up there, Glenn. But then again, he's maybe pitching that GoFundMe page again. So any other questions, comments? John, anything I missed in the chat? Or
no, I think you've hit everything that anyone's brought up.
Perfect. Then I will leave you all with this. First, thank you again, time, engagement. As I said earlier, I commend each of you for being here and utilizing the resources available to you. Before we part ways, I want to share this quote with you because this deeply resonated with me during my particularly tough transition period. You will emerge from this nightmare like the powerful, beautiful, resilient person that you are. It can be hard to remember this when you feel like a shell of the person you once were, but trust me, you are capable of overcoming so much more than you think. And to this day, I'm telling you, it's making the hair on my arm stand up. Simply put, everybody, you will get through this and you will be better off because of it. Thank you again to the team at Beacon. Now that we are connected, I do expect each of you to reach out to me if I could support you in any way. And I expect to be part of your networks and along the ride to help you on this roller coaster. But thank you again for your time today.
Hey, Corey, how can we help you?
Charlie, I appreciate that. Honestly, I'd love to, if you could share this message, right? If you found this impactful, if you found value in this, tell others, and just let them know that's how I find this space is, paying it forward. I'll give you guys the simple mantra that I look at my business lens through is I want to grow my business one meaningful conversation at a time. And that's why I love these opportunities. So if you know anybody that you think may benefit from my experience, my knowledge, allow me to have a conversation with them. And that's plenty. I'd appreciate that.
Great.
Thank you. Sincerely, thank you all.
My pleasure.
Corey, a fantastic presentation. Thank you. Can you email out the presentation? I took some notes, but it was really concise and really powerful. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. I have no problem sending this out to, I'll get it over to you, Rob, and then you could perhaps send it to the group.
Yep, that would be excellent.
Thank you, Corey.
Any other questions or comments or just thoughts or reactions to what Corey was leading us through this afternoon? I know we just had a nice opportunity to make some comments, but anyone else who hasn't had a chance yet to contribute, if there's anything you want to comment on, that would be wonderful.
Corey, what was the most impactful piece of information or advice you got during your search?
Again, the cliche, I love quotes and I hate cliches, and there's such a fine line, right? But it's the simplest fact of this too shall pass, right? Like Corey, and I use the same kind of like, does anybody here think they will never work again? I don't think any of us have that luxury, right? I think we all know some way, shape, or form we will be in the workforce again. And that helped me keep the perspective of then let's refine, let's use this as an opportunity to get back in the space that I want to be in. And let's use this and not miss this opportunity that I have with my kids that I don't normally have.
Beacon is the premier executive networking organization serving the Mid-Atlantic region. To learn more, go to beaconforlife.org.